With this crown, I declare you our sovereign. All hail the King! I, Esdras, saw upon the Mount Zion a great people, whom I could not number, and they all praised the Lord Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, with songs. And in the midst of them, there was a young man of a high stature, taller than all the rest, and upon every one of their heads he set crowns, and was more exalted, which I marveled at greatly. Receive this crown as a blessing from the Most High. May your reign be just and prosperous. So I asked the angel, and said, Sir, what are these? He answered and said unto me, These be they that have put off the mortal clothing, and put on the immortal, and have confessed the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. With this crown, I bestow upon you the legacy of our people. Rule wisely. Now are they crowned, and receive palms. Then said I unto the angel, What young person is it that crowneth them, and giveth them palms in their hands? So he answered and said unto me, It is the Son of Yahweh, whom they have confessed in the world. Then began I greatly to commend them that stood so stiffly for the name of the Lord. With this crown, I charge you to lead our people with wisdom and strength. All hail the new King. Hail! Then the angel said unto me, Go thy way, and tell my people what manner of things, and how great wonders of the Lord thy God thou hast seen. I now crown you King. All hail the new King. Long live the King.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to us younger brothers. And peace and blessing and salutation to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word in truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful lake, the believers, the listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. All right, and what I want to get into today is start off in the book of Galatians chapter 1. Lord will, we can get through the whole book. All right, do a series on the book of Galatians. All right, which this is a very, heavy book. Apostle Paul, he goes into, all right, the law, Yahweh Shai, all right, goes into the history, dealing with being the children of promise, was letting you know that he's speaking to Israelites, dealing with the seed of promise, So just want to give a backdrop, dealing with Galatians, the first chapter, and also what was going on in the city of Galatia, all right, which was a Greco-Roman, province, right, which was a Roman province, under the authority of, all right, the Roman Empire, you see, which is formerly a Greek city-state, that was converted to a Roman province. That's why we use the term, Greco-Roman, because the Roman Empire had a lot of influence, all right, of the Greeks. Okay, and that's why even Apostle Paul mentions the Greeks. Okay, in the book of Galatians. Okay, referring to the Hellenized Jakes. Okay, that was in Galatia, and not only in Galatia but throughout the Greco-Roman Empire, whom these epistles, all right, were written to. Okay, so quick overview, touch on a few things, get some backdrop, and then we'll get into the chapter. Okay, this is an overview of Galatians chapter 1. It says, main purpose. Paul defends the divine origin of his gospel and his apostolic authority, because um, there was always talks, concerning Paul, all right, being an apostle because he wasn't with, the original disciples during the ministry of Yahushua. Okay, he came after the resurrection of Yahushua. You see, and the thing is, Yahushua came to him in a different way. He came to him post, resurrection on the road to Damascus. All right, he had an encounter with Salaki with Yahushua. Okay, and we're going to go into this chapter. He was taught, okay, by Yahushua. You see, Yahushua dealt with him, for a year and a half. Okay, teaching him the doctrine, getting him up to speed. Okay, of the doctrine. Okay, so Yahushua dealt with Apostle Paul. All right, post resurrection. You see, and he will always have to, defend his apostleship. And he wasn't flaunting it around for the sake of clout, but for authority in preaching the gospel, establishing churches all through the spirit of Yahweh Bashim Shai. Okay, so you read it says he is responding to teachers who were pressuring Gentile believers to adopt parts of the Mosaic law, especially circumcision, in order to be fully saved. All right, it says structure and key themes. Greeting. It's Paul emphasizes that his apostleship is from the Most High, not from humans. The gospel centers, all right, centers on Messiah giving himself to rescue us from this evil present age. Warning, it says a different gospel. All right, verses 6-10. Paul is shocked that believers are turning to another message. He says anyone, even an angel who preaches a different gospel, is under a curse. This shows how serious the issue was. Divine origin of Paul's gospel. Paul did not receive the gospel from human teaching. He received it by revelation from Yahushua, the Messiah. Okay? It says he persecuted the assembly of the Most High. He advanced far in the Pharisaic, all right, Judaism. Okay? He had rank amongst the Pharisees. He wasn't just no average Pharisee, amongst the Pharisees. Apostle Paul, had status. Okay, it says after his calling, he did not immediately consult apostles. Paul only later met Peter and James briefly. The symbols, all right, glorify the Most High because of what he done through Paul. From being a persecutor of the church to a preacher of the gospel. So the Lord was using the Apostle Paul for a mighty work in every way. All right, from his conversion to his teaching. Okay, Apostle Paul was used for a mighty work amongst, all right, the Israelite foreigners, okay, who were considered Greeks and Gentiles and uncircumcision. Okay, it says Galatia was going into now this is going into the city of Galatia, all right, the where the town, I said Slaki, the province, okay, of Galatia, which is like what we call a state today. Okay, it says Galatia was a Roman province in Central Asia Minor, modern day Turkey. It included cities like Poseidon, Antioch, all right, Iconium, Lystra, and Derby, all right, Derby. Okay, so it says originally settled by Celtic Gothic tribes, later heavily influenced by Greek Hellenistic culture. Okay, Roman political authority. All right, and why we call it the Greco-Roman Empire. Okay, it says the population included Gentiles, which you had actual heathen, but then you had Israelite foreigners as well that was considered Gentiles amongst these. All right, these heathen, these pagans. Okay, it says Jews and God-fearers familiar with the Torah. It says religious environment, pagan worship, Zeus, Hermes, and emperor cults. You have people worshiping, the emperors. So whoever was the emperor, okay, they had these cults. They would worship, the emperor of Rome. And that's why the Pharisees they tried to use that against Yahushua, saying this man says that he's a king. We have no king but Caesar. All right, you had the chief priest, okay, of the Sanhedrin. They would try to use certain talking points, certain all right prophecy in the gospel, you know, to find Yahushua guilty of treason. Okay, when you go into that case, dealing with those chief priests, all right, and Pilate. Okay, it says religious environment. It says uh pagan worship. Okay, so you have Zeus, Hermes, emperor cults, synagogues in some cities, strong respect for law, ritual, and tradition. It said this mixed setting explains why some believers were tempted to add Torah observance as a requirement for salvation. You know, so they was pushing. Okay, after Apostle Paul, preached the gospel to the Galatians. All right, you had synagogues in Galatia. Okay, and they would come behind the Apostle Paul, and say that they had to keep laws to be saved. They had to be circumcised to be saved. You know, so they went to try to put them under the yoke of the law. Okay, after Apostle Paul teach Yahushua. And it's gonna be an ongoing theme. Within this book. To go through the chapters. Okay, so let's um let's go from there and go back to all right the book of Galatians itself. All right, so you go here, the book of Galatians, chapter 1. Okay, verse 1. It says, Paul, an apostle, all right, not of men, okay, neither by men, but by Yahushua HaMashiach, okay, and the Most High the Father who raised him from the dead. Okay, because even when you get this word apostle, when you go into it, what does it mean? Okay, I think Adam Online got. So when you go into this word apostle, just get a definition. Let's see, Salaki. Mm. All right, so let's go over here to the animal line. Let's look up this word apostle. All right, it says apostle. Okay, it says a messenger, especially the 12 witnesses sent forth by Yahushua to preach his gospel. It says from the Latin apostolos, from Greek apostolos. It says a messenger, an envoy, literally a person sent forth. Okay, so Apostle Paul was sent forth by Yahushua. You get that in the book of Acts. Okay, let's get that real quick in the book of Acts, the 9th chapter. I want to say this Acts 9. Okay, so Paul was sent forth directly, okay, by Yahushua. Okay, when you go back to the book of Acts, so he wasn't made an apostle, by the other apostles, but by Yahushua. Okay, now he was under the order. Okay, he was under the order of the apostles. So Peter being the head of the church. That's why he had to check in concerning the doctrine of the circumcision. Okay, now when you go down, all right, this is Acts 19. This is Acts 9, and I started at 10. It says, and there was a certain disciple. All right, Acts 9 and 10. It says, and there was a certain disciple at Damascus named Ananias. And to him said the Lord in a vision, Ananias, and he said, behold, here I am, Lord. And the Lord said unto him, arise and go into the street, which is called Straight, and inquire, all right, in the house of Judas for one called Saul of Tarsus. For behold, he prayeth, and he have seen in the vision a man named Ananias coming in and putting his hand on him that he might receive his sight. Then Ananias answered, Lord, I have heard, all right, by many, okay, of this man, how much evil he have done, all right, to thy saints at Jerusalem. So Ananias is being instructed in the vision by Yahushua to go put hands on Apostle Paul, so all right, so he can receive his sight. Now, at this time he's named Saul, and he's known for persecuting the church, and that's why Ananias is like, look, I heard about this guy. Do you want me to go put hands on him? Because Apostle Paul had a persecution, okay, around in Jacob, man, and causing them, hey, to be punished, man. Your son put to death. Okay. So Ananias is like, I heard the reputation of this guy. This you sure this is what you want? So it says, and here he have authority from the chief priest to bind all that call on thy name. But the Lord said unto him, go thy way, for he is a chosen vessel unto me to bear my name before the Gentiles, the Israelite foreigners, and kings, and the children of Israel, those of the circumcision. For I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake. Okay? So the Apostle Paul, okay, was commissioned by Yahushua. That's why Apostle Paul said he magnified his office, which is amongst, all right, the Gentiles, Israelite foreigners, because he was commissioned by Yahushua to go amongst them. Okay, and Peter was the first one to, deal, all right, with Israelite foreigners dealing with Cornelius. Okay, and then opened the door up for the Apostle Paul. You see? Now let's go back here. So this is the book of Galatians, chapter 1. Okay, in verse 1 again, it said, Paul, an apostle, not of men, neither by man, but by Yahushua HaMashiach, and the Most High, the Father, who raised him from the dead, and all the brethren which are with me unto the churches of Galatia. Grace be to you and peace from the Most High, the Father, and from our Lord Yahushua HaMashiach, who gave himself for our sins, that he might deliver us from this present evil world, according to the will of the Father, all right, of the Most High and our Father, to whom be glory forever and ever. Amen. It says perversion of the gospel. So it says, I marvel that you have so soon removed, all right, that you are so soon removed from him that call you into the grace of Hamashiach unto another gospel, which is not another, but there be some that trouble you and will pervert the gospel of Hamashiach. So you had, Jake, those are the circumcision, okay, that will come behind, I say, the Apostle Paul, and put the burden, attempt to put the burden of the law on these new converts, because Jake was looking at these pagans that now was calling on Yahweh Shai, okay, and they were looking like they got to keep the whole law like we did. You see, they felt some type of way, and they would go and teach, okay, that they had to keep the law for salvation. You see, and we're going to delve deeper into that as this chapter, as this book, as we get deeper into this book of Galatians. All right, Abaratazah. It said, but though we or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel unto you, all right, then that which we have preached unto you, let him be accursed. So Apostle Paul was like, look, he's not, because see, these guys would come and try to throw their rank around and, throw their family lineages out and, we've been this and that, and my family goes back to this, and, because those Israelite foreigners, they were detached from those lineages. And you see, that's why it had to be about faith. Okay? They was attached, from, the records. And, so Jake will come around with these lineages. And that's why Apostle Paul said, look, don't get caught up in these lineages. Jake was boasting in that line and what it goes back to. Okay, so the Apostle Paul was like, look, man, if an angel come to you and preach to you something different, let him be accursed. If us or angels come and teach something different than what we teach, when we first came amongst you, let them be accursed. Okay, nah, man, we, you see, so the Apostle Paul was, doubling down on the gospel. Okay, verse 9 says, as we said before, so now say again, if any man preach any other gospel unto you that ye have received, let him be accursed, man, because doctrine is vital. Being wrong about certain parts of the doctrine, all right, it affects your faith. Because if you're believing in the wrong thing, you see, if you're believing in the wrong thing, that's a problem. Especially as we come in the clutch. Okay, and based on what we believe, we're going to have to make decisions. You see, that's why you go here. We brought this out before, but let's go back to it. The book of Matthew, chapter 16. All right, in Matthew 16:6, it said, then Yahweh Shai said unto them, take heed and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, it is because we have taken no bread. Which when Yahweh Shai perceived, he said unto them, O ye of little faith, why reason ye among yourselves because you have brought no bread? Do you not understand, neither remember the 5 loaves or the 5,000 and how many baskets ye took up? Neither the 7 loaves or the 4,000 and how many baskets ye took up? So he was letting them know he's not talking about actual bread. So he's reminding them of the miracles when he multiplied bread. All right, the loaves of bread and the fish, which all this spiritual of this truth being distributed amongst the believers, man. Okay, their bread. All right, and it says because Yahweh Shai is what the bread of life, and it's attached to what a doctrine. Okay, it says how is that you do not understand that I spake it not to you concerning the bread that you should beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, then understood how that he bade them not beware of the leaven of bread, but of the doctrine of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Okay, so when you go here, I'll just get this word doctrine. Okay, what is doctrine? You see, so you get this word in the Greek.
Strong's G 1322. Didache. Didache.
All right, the dake in the Greek. It says teaching that which is taught. It says doctrine, teaching concerning. It said the act of teaching, instruction. Okay, so within the doctrine is instructions. Okay, so you know if you have the wrong doctrine, you have the wrong instruction. You see, in the gospel, okay, it's based on a certain doctrine. You see, and right now we're in a time to where you have men that within their doctrine they don't teach that the MOTB is an RFID hill. Okay, a device that's going to be implanted, okay, in the masses, man. Okay, to operate in this society, which includes buying and selling, which John the Revelator described it. Okay, and this so in this prophecy, this point of doctrine is so vital because of the consequences that come, okay, for taking it, man. Okay, so in this time, they had this thing of trying to burden Jake with the whole law. What you have Jake that's on there today too. Okay. But in today's time, the main focal point is the MOTB when it comes to the doctrine. Because the good news is we're going to be delivered, even if we, all right, have to die for not taking it. Guess what? We're going to be resurrected and put on those chariots when Yahweh returns. So that doctrine concerning the MOTB, well, there's good news. We have a solution to that. Okay, because it's coming. It's a thing that the devil is going to attempt to pull off. Okay, and the way things going, it won't be long. The way that he's setting up that infrastructure, man. Okay, this is Galatians 1:10. It says, "For do I now persuade men or the Most High, or do I seek to please men? For if I yet please men, I should not be a servant of Hamashiach." And the Most High never sent the prophets out to please men. You look at our history of how our people interacted with the prophets. You always had a remnant, a few that would take heed, but then you always had a majority, okay, that will be against the prophets, man. Okay, that's why you go here to Isaiah 30. Let's go real quick. All right, we have a record. Okay, while you read verse Isaiah 38, says, "Now go write it before them in a table and note it in a book," which is the Bible today, "that it may be for the time to come, all right, forever and ever." Okay, so the behavior and the reaction of our people towards the prophets is recorded. Okay, and this is why we know as prophets we're not here to be liked by the masses. All right, we're not here to be acceptable to the community. Okay, to be approved and stamped by the community, man. Okay, because Jake always had a certain reaction. The majority of our people always had a certain reaction to the prophets. Okay, said that this is a rebellious people, lying children that will not hear the law of the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Shai. Okay, so the Lord understands the nature of Jake, that it's a rebellious people. Okay, and only a remnant is going to submit and humble down to the gospel, man, to the good news. Okay, to the doctrine. Okay, it says, "What say to the seers or the prophets, see not, and to the prophets prophesy not unto us right things, speak unto us smooth things, prophesy deceits." Okay, so we're not here to please the masses of Israel. Okay, because you have to lie to them. You have to You have to have gimmicks and lie to them, and speak smooth things of this world. You have to mix, the world with the doctrine, and mix this and be on this and on the podcast. You know, it says, "Get you out of the way, turn aside out of the path, cause the Holy One of Israel to cease from before us." Okay, so Jake, the prophets were a nuisance to Jake. because Jake wanted to continue to rebel. Okay, Jake wanted to do their own thing. You see? So the prophets, was always looked as a nuisance amongst the masses of our people. Okay? And that's why, it's a GMS, the most hated group, the community disapproved by the community. Well, that's the normal reaction to the prophets. Yahushua, okay, he told us these things as well. That's the normal reaction to the prophets. How Jake react, this is normal. You see, that's why we look at it as a token of we on the right path, and we're not out here intentionally trying to get on Jake's nerves. We're just teaching the truth. The truth is getting on Jake's nerves. Correction, accountability, okay, discipline. That's what's getting on Jake's nerves. Okay, this place being destroyed. Okay, the heathens not being saved. Like that's what getting on Jake's nerves. Okay, so we serve Yahushua. We're gonna preach the truth, man. So Jake that's offended and feel some type of way, well, that's between him and Yahweh Shemal Shah, man. We're going to keep teaching the truth, man. So we stay in the clear, okay? We're not here trimming our way to seek love, okay, from the community, Nigga, like the community is life or death. If the community don't like you, that's it, Luke 6:22 said, blessed are ye when men shall hate you, and when they shall separate you from their company, and shall reproach you, and cast out your name as evil for the Son of Man's sake. Okay? It says blessed. So for us teaching this truth and Jake reacting like they reacting, well, we know why. We were blessed. Okay? Yahushua said you're blessed when niggas trip because you teach me. This is directly from Yahushua. Okay? Rejoice ye in that day and leap for joy. For behold, your reward is great in heaven, for in the like manner did their fathers unto the prophets, man. So this is nothing new. We just read that in Isaiah. We can go into depth in Jeremiah. They put him in stocks and they slapped Jeremiah and, put him in the pit and charge him with treachery. Okay, he told Ezekiel, like, look, I'm gonna send you to these niggas, man, and they not gonna listen. They don't even listen to me. Okay, so the reaction that we get, from Jake, okay, is nothing new. This ain't nothing to marvel at, man. Okay, this is the norm. Okay, when you look at the history of the prophets, the ministry of the prophets, man. Okay, even Moses, what they told Moses, are you a leader over us now? Moses called a body for Jake. Okay, Moses left. Okay, the ranks of the elite of Egypt. To be an advocate for Jake, and Jake still bucked up, man. Okay, this is the book of Luke, chapter 6, verse 24. It said, but woe unto you that are rich, for you have received your consolation. Okay, woe unto you. All right, we'll say, I want to jump to verse 26, the point. It said, woe unto you when all men shall speak well of you, for so did their fathers to the false prophets, man. Let's see Jake get off on that. Comment board full of praise and comments and, little groupie and simple niggas and fanboys. And see Jake get off on that. Okay? So that's why Jake, will teach anything that'll draw the crowd. All right? Jake will teach and do anything for the sake of drawing the crowd, man. Because they get off on being well spoken of by the community. Okay, by a bunch of people that don't have a clue what's going on or what they're a part of, man. Okay? It says, woe unto you when all men shall speak well of you, for so did their fathers to the false prophets, man. Okay? So now, man, we're not here, to serve, the emotions of Jake, to cater. Okay? and to make Jake feel comfortable with the doctrine. Now we serve Yahweh Shai, man. We're gonna teach the gospel. We're gonna teach the truth of the matter. Our Ratazah we endure. You know, and it says, verse 11, back to Galatians chapter 1, verse 11 said, "But I certify you, brethren, that the gospel which was preached of me is not after man. For I neither received it of man, neither was I taught it, but by revelation of Yahweh Shai HaMashiach." Okay, so he letting them know, like, look, Yahweh Shai dealt with me, all right, directly. Revealing truths and mysteries, okay, and breakdowns into the Apostle Paul. That's why even Apostle Peter said, some of the writings of Paul are hard to be understood. And the spirit ain't dealing, you'll be trapped up. As you can see today, there's a lot of men that's trapped up and snared, by the books of the epistles of the Apostle Paul. And it was meant to be that way. Yahweh Shai set him up to be a snare. Okay? And it said, "For ye have heard of my conversation in past times in the Jews' religion, how that I beyond measure I persecuted the church of the Most High and wasted it, and profited in the Jews' religion above many my equals in my own nation, being more exceedingly zealous of the tradition of my fathers." Because Apostle Paul, he was, he was high in status amongst the Pharisees. You know, he was high in status. Okay, but he left all. That's why Apostle Paul said, "Look, I was a Pharisee of the Pharisees." Okay, until he learned Yahweh Shai. You see, that's why when you go here to the Philippians, let's get this real quick. In the book of Philippians, chapter 3. All right, Philippians 3 and 4 says, "Though I might also have confidence in the flesh, if any other man thinketh that he have whereof he might trust in the flesh out of more, circumcised, all right, the 8th day of the stock of Israel, the tribe of Benjamin, and Hebrew of the Hebrews, as touching the law, a Pharisee, concerning the zeal persecuting the church, touching the righteousness which is in the law, blameless. But what things were gained to me, those I counted loss for Hamashiach." Okay? Yeah, doubtless, and I count all things but loss for the excellency of the knowledge of Yahweh Shai HaMashiach, my Lord, for whom I have suffered loss of all things, and do count them but dung, that I may win Hamashiach. All right? Because the Apostle Paul had a promising future as a Pharisee. He was for sure going to be on the Sanhedrin, amongst the Sanhedrin, that the council of elders and chief priests and Sadducees and high priests. Okay, he was well on his way, but he stepped back from all that once he learned Yahweh Shai. You see, because the Sanhedrin, they was against Yahweh Shai. They was kicking against the pricks. So Yahweh Shai said Apostle Paul was kicking against the pricks, man. So going back to Galatians 1 and 15, it says, "But when it pleased the Most High, who separated me from my mother's womb and called me by his grace," okay, because prophets, okay, the spirit of prophets subjugated to the prophets. And see, this grace period was for us to be activated for our office, man. Okay, but we was always born this. Okay, that's why you go, even Apostle Paul says what in the book of Corinthians, book of Corinthians chapter 14, verse, all right, 32, it says, "And the spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets." Okay, so the spirits, okay, if you're a prophet, well, guess what? You come back as a prophet every time. Okay, that's the lot every time. If we're prophets, man. Okay, we was called from what? The womb. Jeremiah. Let's go here, Jeremiah. Then we get that one in Isaiah. Jeremiah 1. All right. This is Jeremiah 1. And 4 says, Then the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Before I formed thee in the belly, okay, I knew thee, and before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. Okay, so Apostle Paul, all right, he stayed. Look, I'm, separated from the womb to do this. You see, prophets are sent back on assignment. Okay, there's not a special ritual you go through to become a prophet. No, you're born there. Okay, and at the point in time, the Lord, all right, within grace, okay, He activates the prophets, all right, for their assignment, man. You know, and you go to Isaiah, all right, Isaiah 49 and 1, it says, Listen, O owls, unto me, and hearken ye my people from far. The Lord have called me from the womb, all right, from the bowels of my mother hath He made mention of my name. Okay, so all the prophets, okay, are born prophets, man. Okay, prophets are recycled for the purpose of Yahweh Bashim Shai. Okay, John told John the Revelator, you shall prophesy again before kings and many people, showing that their spirit will be recycled back. You know, so Apostle Paul is like, look, prophets are ordained from the womb. Okay, they just have to be activated by this word. You know, then also, and spiritually, we become what? Born again. We become birthed again in the spirit. That's why that old man, he fades away because that new man is born, once we're activated by this word. Okay. So verse 17 said, Neither went I up to Jerusalem to them which were apostles before me, but I went into Arabia and returned again unto Damascus. Matter of fact, Galatians 1 and 16 said to reveal, it said, but when it pleased the Most High who separated me from my mother's womb and called me by his grace to reveal his son in me. Okay, and this was when Apostle Paul was what? Born again. They were spiritually born. Okay, that I might preach him among the heathen. Immediately I conferred not with flesh and blood. So when he was called, when he was born again, when he was activated in the spirit, okay, he didn't immediately go to the apostles. He was separated. Okay, as it's going to go into, neither went I up to Jerusalem to them which were apostles before me, but I went into Arabia and returned again unto Damascus, man. So he went into Arabia, okay, and was taught, okay, for 3 years. Shalaki, I said a year and a half earlier, it was 3 years, Shalaki. Verse 18 said, Then after 3 years, I went up to Jerusalem to see Peter and abode, all right, with him 15 days. So he checked in after those 3 years, after the Lord had him separated and was dealing with him. Okay. But other apostles saw I none save James, the Lord's brother, which we just went through the book of James. Now the things which I write unto you, behold, before the Most High, I lie not. Afterwards, I came into the regions of Syria and Cilicia. Okay. So, it says, and was known by face unto the churches of Judea, which were in Hamashiach, but they heard only that he which persecuted us in times past now preacheth the faith which once he destroyed, and they glorified the Most High in me. So the fact that Paul was even preaching the gospel, after he was so adamant and against the gospel, they gave glory to the Most High. Okay, so the Apostle Paul was being used, to do a mighty work, man. And he did it humbly. You see, so yeah, that's the point. Made to the end of that chapter. Lord will, you brothers. All right, and you sisters are edified. Once again, we give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushua, Bahashim, Kapadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers. And peace and blessing, salutation, hopefully, shalom.